It is truly a battle of good versus evil, I think. The suggestions about what they are doing to try to frame me in every possible negative way. And I think they're trying to make a multiply people who look ordinary and are not very big, multiply them and make them welfare dependent on and poverty, and coax them to be um, religious believers, which I've never been, and also coax them to be um, uh, communist dependence on welfare. I think that's what Emperor Charles is trying to do. It seems like he's pure evil, like he's the living embodiment of what we call satanic evil, worse than the Hebrew concept of Lucifer, more evil. It looks like he's like the embodiment of pure evil, Emperor Charles in London. And actually, evil is very close to me. My older brother Samuel, an agent of the British Empire under the Emperor Charles and his father before him. And the game Ultima gave a warning by showing the traditional depiction of a devil, red with a tail and wings and horns on his head and hooves on his feet. And these red devils are meeting with British men. And the game is, I guess, about Lord British, I guess. And it's a fascinating game because I think it's exactly telling the true character of the lineage of Emperor Charles. It's just entirely embracing evil in terms of no principles. All he does is try to gain power, and the people who work for him, Clinton, Bush, Obama, and I'm trying to maybe pry Trump away from him. I was trying to pry Biden away from Emperor Charles. I was trying to pry Trump away from Emperor Charles. Um, Obama is one of the most dependent on Emperor Charles. George Bush is close to Emperor Charles. And I wouldn't probably bother trying to pry Bill Clinton away from Emperor Charles, but maybe the only thing you can do is try to pry some of these guys away from Emperor Charles. These are deeply evil. These former presidents are pillars of the evil of Emperor Charles in London. Deeply evil. And that's when a person embraces every wrong principle, every principle which is wrong and evil, he embraces. And it's out of ignorance, I think, because of his low IQ doesn't allow him to find, not without a thought leader who is both disciplined and high IQ. Because even if you're very disciplined in finding truth in application of scientific method to find truth, even if you're very disciplined, if you're also low IQ, you can get fooled by someone who's cognitively more gifted, who studies how you think and then arranges an anomalous exception that defies your ability to discern the truth from pattern recognition and deductive logic and inductive logic or whatever, all that stuff. So I think we're under, it's like having what they call a satanic pope or something. The Church of England is currently under a satanic regime. And ooh, not only low IQ people can be fooled, if there's a big enough group who's dedicating themselves to fooling a high IQ individual, and they have enough of them, see numbers of people who are lower IQ by their numbers of numerical advantage can outsmart, not really in a productive way. In a destructive way, they can fool, deceive, degrade the confidence of the and the rigorous practice of scientific methodology by giving bad data to undermine your confidence in your own scientific method. Like, let's say you're a scientist practicing science in a laboratory, but one of your guys that you hired, his job is to take forensic evidence and replace it with something contrived and false to mislead you, and to go and corrupt your data with false uh, numbers and false observations. And his job, he's working for, say, another corporation, and his job in your laboratory is to interfere with your laboratory and your application of scientific method by sabotage and deception. So, okay, now if you imagine you've got a lot of people and they're all doing that to you, and they're also hostage takers, and they take your mind off of science because they're saying your daughter is now dating one of the worst men in the city, and your daughter, you're going to have to go, and you're going to have to be prepared. This guy's a real dangerous man, and you're going to have to go into the city. And so these hostage takers are manipulating society to take away the science. Let's say the guy with the high IQ, the science leader, they're going to distract him with hostage-taking tactics to take his mind off of science. And they also have saboteurs. One of them had been hired into his laboratory, and a lot of bribes were paid to get him hired, and maybe sex bribes and various forms of persuasion and coercion may be brought to bear to bring him in, get him into your laboratory so that he can falsify your scientific data, and maybe he could be working in a crime lab and he's going to add fake forensic evidence. So this is the type of thing that the monarchy regimes specialize in, is organized crime. And well, it's very old and very traditional, and it's a very traditional and primordial even form of government that you have a monarchy. It's a primordial form of government. And they think it's perfectly legitimate to use all these dishonest tactics that Americans, founders of America, USA, founders of the USA, do not approve of and never approved of. So anyway, it's and then they say, well, if you're so naive that you don't use deception, then you really are lost, because everyone in the world uses deception. But you know what? The people who are most cognitively gifted can be constructive and build value without participating in the competition of tearing the other guy down through the use of deception and sabotage. So you don't always have to play that game that those who are less cognitively gifted want to play that game. You do not always have to play that game. And there have been times and eras when people had risen above that sort of thing. Of course, it's human nature, and there's going to be fraud and deception and stuff like that happening all the time. But it doesn't have to be so, like it's their religion to be dishonest, and dishonest all the time until they maybe even lose sight of the truth themselves. I think they did, because the monarchy regimes, which are invariably not pure racially, ethnically white Northern European, they're never ethnically pure Northern European. I guess the closest to being Northern European, maybe they're the Swedish monarchy, but they probably had cosmetic surgeries because they have some, evidently, some Jewish heritage. And I don't frown on Caucasians who are not pure white. I don't like the Jewish religion. And so those who are not pure white, they are, usually stronger, but they're also usually less cognitively gifted versus the ethnically pure Northern European whites. And currently, I'm trying to help um, restore confidence during a time of terrible anxiety about the future of the ethnically, as we call ourselves, not that I'm one of them, not purely white, but those who are ethnically Northern European. I have a fraction of African heritage, and it's so the Jewish upstarts. I like to call them upstarts. Uh, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, Musk, and I'm not going to call Emperor Charles an upstart, but he is sort of acting like an upstart, I guess. They are trying to portray me as a radical black African American leader, and I think they are raising children of my genetics. They are parenting those children as a sabotage operation to make them choose to over to do two things: choosing mediocre partners to breed with, and then to numerically go over quota with a mediocre partner. And so they're trying to say, "This is Paul," and they're getting some quotes and getting them out of context, because my defense of the idea that small people can be important, small people can be great, small people can be great achievers is, well, it's most applicable to suggest that people can admire and look up to people who are usually the people who are most overlooked, and the men who are most ignored are Chinese. And I'm not trying to say that the larger African American men are not more usually more desirable for your daughter. If you have an African American daughter, you might wish for a big, strong young man to be her to be her first breeding partner, to have a child with her, to make a child with her. And I don't have a preference for the more ordinary. They're more common if they're not very big. And African American society is very competitive on body size and athletics. And so if they are giving to my daughters those who are not big and good looking too, they should be big, good looking and big, but they steered me into a conflict with their propaganda. You see, it was their propaganda. They made these things up. They had Samuel, who wanted to believe the worst things about me, and they said, well, Samuel's right because he's his brother. We got to run on this. We're going to tell everyone that Paul is a beast fag. He's gay for animals. That's the most insulting thing anybody could ever say about a man in terms of his sexuality. That's the most insulting sexual insult that has ever been said about a man. That's terrible. So this campaign by these evil Jewish men, they're off the charts. And Samuel, turns out he's one of them. Samuel Gaskin is one of them. So I'm trying to figure out how many children do I have, and are they all going to be, is Trump and is Bush and Clinton and Obama and Trump arranging the marriages of children of my genetics to make them all like make sure they're all are any of them Caucasian? Do any of the daughters select a large handsome man to breed with, or is it always a little ordinary looking guy that they breed with? And to be fair, women can be small and still be much more successful, but it's much more difficult, I think, for a small man in a society of larger men. If they're small for for their ethnicity, if they're small for their race, small for their racial category, that is difficult for men to deal with. And I am not wishing that my daughters would have a preference for small men unless they're Chinese, because frankly, there's the small Caucasians and small African Americans. They're so common that, and so they're trying to say, oh, just be very religious. And I never was very religious. I never was religious at all. I was gradually persuaded into the idea that an ambiguous enough idea of God, if it by the virtue of it being very ambiguous, meaning you don't specifically believe that God is personified or is the character described in Scripture where he speaks directly to Moses. You don't believe that. It's not like a comic book. It's like a more ambiguous idea. And you don't believe that the God concept necessarily, I don't believe, responds to prayers that are, with the idea that you say God can do anything. So if I pray for transubstantiation of matter, what they call in Catholic or Latin literature about Catholic theology, for water to be converted into wine without a vineyard, for food to appear on the table without going fishing or making bread and baking bread, growing the wheat and harvesting the wheat and all of that, milling the wheat and then making the bread and baking the bread and going fishing with the nets that fishermen or the hooks and lines that fishermen require to catch fish, to bring the fish and the loaves of bread to the table in the way which is not performing miracles. I don't believe in that miracles can suddenly make food appear on the table. I never believed in that. And I never believed in the idea of a virgin birth, and I never believed in a resurrection of the body. Only a resurrection, hypothetically, a resurrection of the spirit, or the ghost, I would say, of the ghost of Jesus Christ. I said that's the idea of a resurrection of his spirit, or his ghost, specifically his ghost, that was made to be more persistent and long enduring by the distribution of the effect of his character and the ghost, the persistence of the character of his ghost sort of reverberating through history. Never did I believe in a virgin birth, and even more impossible to believe in is the resurrection from the dead, or also impossible miracles to believe in. I never believed in curing, that he could have cured blindness or restored, say, an amputated limb or whatever. These miracles, I never believed in it. So you can't call me religious. And then they say, oh, you believed in God. And I was wishing that prayer could be true. And it was an emotional crutch for me to wish to believe in a God of justice. And that was my wish. And it was for my own cathartic consolation of myself to defend myself against this evil Samuel Gaskin, this evil half-brother. And I was wishing, I was reading a Bible verse, it said something like, break the jaw, maybe said, I break the jaws of the wicked and pluck the spoils from his teeth, something like that. And I thought, that's what Samuel deserves. He's evil, and that was cathartic because he's evil. He said, oh, he's attacking me. He's pure evil. So, no, I never believed that prayer was going to work. It was cathartic. This is me to myself. I wish this formally, if only, and even though I don't expect any answer from God, this is my formal prayer, and that I will defend myself and get justice against this evil Samuel Gaskin. It was not a conversion to the belief that it's going to happen because I pray it, and it's going to happen because of God answers prayers. No, I never believed that. I've never been religious. And now they're trying, see, with Bill Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump, and I don't know to what extent Joe Biden, and well, especially the Emperor Charles, are influencers through the prime ministers of Canada, rigging the scene with the woman in Montreal, the Haitian woman in Montreal. They're suggesting she has children of my genetics, and maybe they have a better looking face than me, but obviously they're not going to have as much of a large brain volume as me, but they're going to have a better looking face than me. But they want them to be religious. I was never religious. That's a fib, a deception, a lie, a falsehood, purely false, liars. Emperor Charles in London. So they want to say, and George Bush and Bill Clinton, Paul is a religious Muslim, and you should be like the father. You should be like your father. Go and believe in magic. Go and believe in magic, and that you can get your prayers answered. Believe in superstition. Yeah, just go believe in that because your father Paul believes in that strongly. Yeah. No, I never believed in that. And then they say, Paul has a preference. He doesn't like vanity. He has a preference for men who are ordinary. Yeah, he's in praise of the ordinary men. So you should look for an ordinary man of a better character. Yeah. You should look ordinary. Don't be vanity. Don't have vanity. Don't look for a big, good-looking guy. You've got to be self-reliant. Paul's in debt. He's bad in debt. He's a moocher. He's such a costly person. He's so bad. And you have to not be in debt. Money is the most important thing in the world. So don't choose a man who looks better for your daughter. He has to support himself. He can't be on welfare. No, my social credit is the best of any man in America, billionaire or otherwise. My social credit is the highest, as the greatest cognitive contributor, the greatest defender of 1776, the greatest historian, the greatest sociologist, the greatest intellectual of the century, the most important and the most prolific contributor to the well-being and the prosperity and the social harmony of the NATO member nations. I am simply the greatest contributor to the Western civilization. And I said this before, or I wrote this, even if there were 100,000 welfare dependents that were that I was responsible for having them dependent on the welfare. Even if there were 1 million or even 2 million, my contributions are more valuable than that. And they're nickel and diming me. Paul's in poverty, and Paul's the worst moocher of all kinds. Bill Clinton and George Bush. Oh, these guys are pure evil. Working for Emperor Charles, who's pure evil. And Samuel Gaskin, their agent from I thought she was my mother, but maybe her sister is my mother. I don't know. So much has been changed anyway. Maybe she's not my mother. She sure doesn't act like my mother. She hasn't been acting like my mother. She acts like she's Samuel's mother, and she acts like I'm the son of her sister, a rival. So I guess that's enough for now. I prefer, if I have African-American daughters, I prefer they choose the man who looks the best. Even if he says Paul's scum, Paul's a queer, Paul's a liar, I don't give a damn what he says. He's got to look the best and be big as possible for my African-American daughter to breed with. He should be as big. He should be at least as tall as me. I'm over 6 foot, 6'3". He should be 6'5", and really good looking. And I don't give a damn if they're on welfare, because I don't apologize for any of my descendants being on welfare. My contributions to the NATO member nations are that great. I don't apologize for any of my descendants being on welfare. I am so great of a contributor of cognitive work solutions to help denying that there was any racial slavery of Africans, proving that there was never racial slavery of Africans. It's always been male gender slavery, never racial. If racial discrimination is involved, that's beside the point, because women are all above it. That's why we don't call it racial slavery. That's why it's called male gender slavery, because it affects every race, and the male gender is the criteria, the primary criteria. And when race is a secondary criteria, that does not take precedence over the primary criteria, which is gender. It's male gender slavery, never been racial slavery. And I said they should remove the monument to Abraham Lincoln because he faked his own death. I'm the #1 cognitive contributor in America, much better than Rush Limbaugh. And Glenn Beck, he's about